for law enforcement or anything else, it's always kind of the same. There's an ethical system within that profession that is kind of the base. And then there's moral rules and moral judgment as we think about that. So how do we distinguish between personal and professional values? Because we all have values, right? And we're going to talk a lot about values and morals and ethics. But we all have values. You have personal values and there's professional values. So what are the difference between the two?
I might say personal is more of a family, house, that kind of values, I guess. And not really a family or a house or anything, but more geared towards your personal life instead of having like professional values would be like when you're in the workplace, while you're on your job, having values geared towards that. You wouldn't necessarily use when you're with your family.
Okay.
With friends or something like that.
Yeah. They're just sets. A lot of the values are the same on the job. I mean, they have the same kind of connotations as your personal values. It's nice when they line up, but sometimes they conflict. And we're going to talk about how do we deal with the values conflict. And how do we keep our personal attitudes from interfering with personal services. So, what are values?
Personal beliefs.
Okay, your personal belief system. Personal things that you hold to be true in your life. They're values that are based on how do we get them? Where do they come from?
Our parents.
Parents, big part. In your school? Friends. Churches. All those things in our society and in communities will help you develop your values. Values you have all of you from here, or some of you moved from other places recently to be here? Where have you come from?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you notice a change when you got here? Is the community different, or was it pretty much the same as Montana?
I grew up in a town at 800, so moving here was absolutely different.
Yeah, just a bigger area. I was just in Billings. I taught a class over there a couple weeks ago, and one of the things we talked about, I was doing some work with their critical incident team over there in Billings, and I talked about how similar they were, because there were a lot of similar values in Montana. Same kind of state, a lot of rural. Idaho has a lot of that. Anybody else come from anywhere else to Idaho and notice?
Denver.
You came from Denver, which is a much bigger city. And did you notice any change in the environment, I guess?
Yeah, it's a lot different. It's like the diversity portion of it is very different, and so just like the communities are different. A lot of it's not bilingual up here, and a lot of it's not.
Right.
People are more outgoing. Like they'll talk to you and look at you when you're walking by. You know.
Right. So how about you?
San Francisco.
Okay. Now, how different is Boise from San Francisco?
People are more personal here. You actually talk to them.
You talk to them, and so that's a value personality that this community has formed. And not saying San Francisco is any worse or Denver is any worse, but we're more conservative here. Boy, are we ever! And but the community you grow up in, you kind of develop value systems from that community, and when you go somewhere else, I went back to where did I go? Virginia, back to the FBI Academy back in 2002. I was there at the National Academy for 10 weeks, and I found that the that community, their values were way different. It was just very strange, kind of trying to fit into that community. The East Coast mentality is way different than what we have out here. And so anytime you go anywhere that's different, you're going to find different values. And we usually assimilate into that, and we kind of become used to what our surroundings are, and we fit that into our own value system somehow and make it work. So values are the things that we believe. What about morals? What are morals then?
Your definition of what's right and wrong.
Okay. So is it kind of like we take our morals or our values and we come up with a moral code? Is that how that works? You know, I've been teaching this stuff for like 20 years, and I still have problems with this, trying to figure out, okay, what's the difference between a moral and a value, and where do they come from? But I think I'm beginning to get it a little bit. And that's why I always like to hear what you guys have to say, because you can help me with these definitions. So morals are those constructs then that come from our values. So then what are ethics? What are ethics? Go ahead.
The appropriate way in which your values and your morals affect other people.
Okay. I like to look at it like this. And it's kind of like, if I can do this right. So we have values, and these are basically our beliefs that go to our morals. And these are kind of the rules that we decide we're going to live by. And those then go to our ethics. And that's actually the doing. So we have these values and beliefs, the beliefs out here that, okay, this is what I believe, and so I can set up a set of rules for myself, and that in turn goes to ethics, and that's how I behave. This is my behavior then, or my ethics. And so we talked about, personally we have our own beliefs, and we have our own rules, and we have our own way of behaving. And then we also professionally have sets of rules. You know, police officers have had a code of ethics, code of conduct that they have to abide by. Social workers have it, doctors have it, lawyers have it. All these different professions have a code of ethics, or how they are supposed to behave, that basically go back to the moral compass that they have, and back to the values. So which is it, values or ethics? Values are statements what we consider as ideal, what we hope to achieve. And then ethics are the direction we take, the action to take place, derived from the desired outcomes. So that's kind of a way to look at the difference. So the difficulty we have is that sometimes we have what we call conflicts in our values. And they're so central to who we are, we're not consciously aware of them. What you do, you ever notice that when you have an interaction with people, and those relationships again, that sometimes things come out that we don't even think about that may offend other people? Or they may question that, or you've been around people who say things and do things that it's just like, oh, what's with that? You know, why does that person have the audacity to say those things or to act that way in public, or, in this particular setting? It's because our values are so ingrained in us, if we don't look at them and know what they are, they can affect other people. So value conflicts. That's what happens when they come in conflict, when you have a situation that your values are in conflict with what you're dealing with, or maybe your agency's values. And addressing them may kind of be, we talk about this abstract stuff, but real life sometimes it's different. So, what I want you to do, I want to get to the importance of understanding what our values are. That's what we want to get to. So, on the first page of what I handed out, there's a self-awareness survey. So if you take some time, fill that out, and then we will talk about that and see if we can kind of begin to understand ourselves a little bit. Okay, so let's talk about it for a minute. So the first one, members of helping professions such as victim assistance should refrain from getting personally involved with victims they work with. What do you think? Agree or disagree? Yes.
I would say agree, not strongly agree, but agree, because to some extent that personal involvement will make you better at your job.
Okay.
You'll care more, and an investment in that will make you a better person.
Yeah. What do the rest of you think?
Agree.
You agree? So, how do we keep from getting overly involved?
Being conscious of it.
Being conscious of it, and again, that's what I'm trying to get to is how do you do this kind of work and understand yourself, and that's being conscious. So, anybody else have anything to say about that? So what about boundaries and stuff? What about you're working with victims? Your job is to help out. Let's go to a domestic violence shelter. You got women in this domestic violence shelter. You're an advocate there, and you have to help them get a job. And so, in order to get a job, they need a babysitter for the day. And so, do you watch their kids while they go interview for the job? You're helping them out. You're trying to help them. Is that being too close?
I would say you're putting yourself in a possibly dangerous situation.
What do you mean?
The liability that comes with doing that.
Okay.
Maybe you could talk to the agency about providing something at the facility, not doing something on your own.
Right. Okay, and that it goes back, a lot of this stuff is going to go back to what are the rules of your agency. And some agencies, the job is, we hire an advocate, your job is to do what you need to do to get that person to get a job. Can you guys go any further away? You're all right.
It's not that scary.
It's all right. I can walk over here.
It's okay, some great exercise.
That's right. It's good for me.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So acting in the best interest of your client a lot of times requires that you remain professional and you keep up the professional boundaries. So maybe babysitting isn't the thing you should be doing. Maybe you should be doing, as somebody suggests, maybe the agency can provide that.
And again, along the same lines of acting in the best interest of your client, if you are the one doing the babysitting instead of helping them find a babysitter, they become reliant on you to
So
take
true.
care of them. So they go from one dependent situation to another.
Right.
Instead of helping them develop a self-reliance.
And I've got a great example of that. Right now, I'm currently a case manager for a private nonprofit therapeutic foster care agency. So I have about 10 homes that I supervise that we have kids in, and oftentimes I get those calls from my parents saying, I need some help with with transporting this kid to an appointment today. I've got other things going on. And so you have to kind of go, okay, where do I draw the line? Sometimes, if they really need that, is it really an emergency and is it really necessary, or are they just using you because they don't want to take the kid? So it's really important that you understand what are your values about helping, because if your values are, whenever somebody asks me, I'm going to respond, I'm going to do whatever I can to help them because I think it's really important to help people who are in need. Can that get you in trouble? Yeah. You have to understand that about yourself, and I tend to be that person who doesn't say no very often. And so pretty soon I find myself, A, way too busy, too many things to do, and B, sometimes I'm doing things that I shouldn't be doing, just what you're saying. I'm not teaching that client self-reliance and doing things on their own. Okay. So the second one, a higher spiritual power should guide our behavior and thinking. What do you think? Go ahead.
I assumed 3 was to be a neutral. 3 to 3. So I said 3 because if that is something that is important to you, then it is important that that guides your behavior and your thinking.
Right.
If it is not something that's important to you, then there are other things that you need to focus on to be your guide.
Okay. Anybody else want to weigh in on that one?
You have to be careful that your belief in a higher power doesn't become exclusionary.
Right.
And start talking about like intersectionality and things like that. If you're out in an advocacy agency and you mainly help, middle class white women, that's a problem. You have to be all inclusive, be able to help all women. And so it's kind of one of those things where it provides a lot of good. You just have to be very cognizant of how you're applying it.
Okay. Again, this comes down to a personal value, doesn't it? So, if how many think that it's important though to have a spiritual, whatever that may be, a spiritual connection to something? Is that important? Some of you say it is, some of it's not. I really believe that in order for, and we talk about integrity, that integrity means to be made whole. That's what the word really means. We use it a lot when we talk about ethics. We talk about integrity and having that and try to define what that is. But integrity means that we're complete. So basically it says that we're our physical being is together, our mental being is together, and our spiritual being is together. And that we are intact that way. So I think all of us, in whatever way we decide we're going to express spirituality, have that in us. Some of it's just being a good person. Others have some really, really strict religious tenets that we adhere to, and we do things. So let's say that you're working in an agency that you have a strong belief in right to life, and you have to counsel a woman who is considering aborting a fetus. So terminating her pregnancy may be a better way to say that. What are you going to do? So now you have a conflict. You have one of those values conflicts, right? So what do you do? What's the ethical thing for you to do in that situation? Yes, sir.
Bring in a second person who has opposite views of you by chance?
Okay. Find somebody else to handle that client. Yes.
I think that this is that kind of self-awareness piece as well. Like if I have a belief, a value that an individual is perfectly capable of making their own decisions, and so and that overrides what may or may not be my belief about terminating pregnancies, and so I would help them make their own decision. But if I don't feel like I'm capable of doing that, I would certainly refer out to somebody who would be better.
Okay, good. And that's where you have to suspend your values sometimes. We have personal values that that are precious to us, but maybe not so precious to somebody else. And as professionals, we have to be able to step back and say, okay, I can, just as you said, I can work on the fact of self-determination with this client. She knows what's best for her, and I can assist her in that. And if I can't do that, if I can't separate myself, then that's when you have to find somebody else. You
But that poses its own set of problems as well. It's kind of one of those things where if you don't develop those skills to check that kind of stuff at the door, is that client, especially if they're, say, they're a battered spouse, are they going to feel even more, abandoned? Do you know what I mean? Like, they're out here looking for help. You said, oh, I'm here to help you. Well, I need to have an abortion. I can't help you anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I need to find someone else. And so, yeah, that's where that
do
kind
it
of...
like that.
No, I know, but...
You would make sure that they were aware that it was in their best interest for them to work with somebody.
But you're still passing judgment on them. It's still, for whatever reason that they're using to have an abortion or to terminate the pregnancy, maybe it's because he was raping her repeatedly, we don't know. But when you make when you make a value judgment on her decision, then that's going to negatively impact her. Because that's where you're judging her actions, and there's a point where you need to be non-judgmental and be able to help anybody who walks through the door.
I agree.
So, I mean,
But
I can
if
see...
I'm not able to do that, it's still going to be in their best interest to work with somebody else. Granted, if I'm not able to do that ever, then it's probably not the right profession.
And that's kind of what I'm saying. It's if you and it may be the first time you can't do that, but it's one of those things that you really have to maintain those, because is it ethical for you to do that to someone, to pass judgment on her when she's coming to you for help?
But I think it's a little bit naive to believe that you're not going to ever pass judgment on people.
No, and I didn't say you won't ever, but I mean, for something as controversial or as polarized as that decision, that's something that you need to be able to come to terms with. So, because realistically, it's like you said, she can make her own decisions, and so you need to maintain that ethical or that professional boundary and just be able to help her no matter what. It's obviously
Go ahead.
anything that's going to be decided today.
I think there's
come on.
a difference in between passing judgment on somebody and having your own set of values that are important to yourself. So there's a difference in saying that I'm looking at your decision and placing blame on you or judging you for something and realizing what things go against whatever you have an internal core belief in something, and knowing kind of what she was saying before is knowing your limitations, and if you're looking out for your client's best interest, and so above and beyond anything else, the client and how they're going to be best served and be provided the best type of assistance is really the way that we should look at it. And like you're saying, there's that balance in between it, because there's so many things that, so many different obstacles that we're going to face, and clients that we're going to work with, and whether we can work with pedophiles or work with rapists or work with all this other kind of stuff. Abortion just seems to be something that's kind of more prevalent now, or more acceptable, I guess. And so it's something that such a moral conflict that so many people look at and face, that it seems like we should take that value and kind of get over it, because there's a lot of things, or a lot of situations where we're going to deal with that.
Well, and that's kind of the thing, that's exactly right. It's kind of like, you're more than welcome to have your own values about terminating a pregnancy. Don't terminate a pregnancy. But for you to not be able to work with someone because they're making that decision, that's where it becomes an issue. Because no one's saying that you can't hold that belief for yourself. The problem comes when we try to expose those beliefs onto somebody. Yes. And especially when, we're obviously in an educated, paying position, most likely. We may be a volunteer, and here's someone who's coming to us for help who may be at their last. And, that's the last thing we should be doing, is posing our values and our judgments onto them or trying to push our beliefs to them. We should just be helping them for the best of our ability.
Thank you for that interchange. And I use the abortion issue just as you picked up, because it's an easy one to talk about, because it's an easy one to have value conflict over. And I would agree with what you said, is that you can be judgmental. You just can't let your let your client know it. And that's basically what we talk about when we are suspending our values. And what you said that really well, is that you have to have the humility to say, I'm here to help you, and you can determine your own ways to do it. How can I help you? with that. That's why we need to know about ourselves. That's why it's important we know about ourselves and know when we walk into those things. If you don't think about it, if you don't realize, examine yourself, you'll walk into these things blindsided, and that's when you get yourself jammed up. So